One of the threads running through the whole of the Easter story is the theme of justice. I guess when you think about it, scholars have focused on legal issues about the trials of Jesus, who was responsible for what, whose fault was it that Jesus ended up being crucified, and significantly, in terms of the history of anti-Semitism, who was actually responsible? Where did the buck stop? Of course, Martin Luther famously thought it stopped with the Jewish people, which is the root of much of the anti-Semitism that we see around us in the world today. Others have pointed out that ultimately it was down to Pilate, because Pilate could have said no, but he went along because he was, well, I guess we've got to say there were lots of things going on in Pilate's life. It's easy to say that he was too weak to stand up for what was right. He was juggling very many issues, as indeed many of our leaders are today. But as I was thinking about the issue of justice, I focused on the story of the thieves who were crucified alongside Jesus, because one of them actually asked Jesus for forgiveness for everything that he'd done in his life, basically. And he didn't go through any of the motions that Christians have historically thought to be really important in terms of whatever faith in Jesus means. So we know for sure that he didn't, quotes unquote, pray the sinner's prayer, as many would say we need to do today. He wasn't baptized. He never shared in any of the sacraments. And yet Jesus assured him that you'll be okay. Today you'll be with me in paradise. I know some Christians for whom this goes against all the grain of their moralistic expectations. Why should somebody just be forgiven like that? Why should there not be a price to pay? And yet, as you think about it, this is one of the strong themes through the whole of Jesus' teaching. It's a bit like the story of the so-called prodigal son, who might, of course, been labelled the story that is the prodigal older son, or even perhaps the dysfunctional family. Who knows? But the point of that story is that the father, and I think we are intended to see the father as a kind of image of God and the way God receives us, the father simply receives back the wayward son without, well, in the story, with no questions asked. But he certainly is just embraced without having to pay a price for the things that he got wrong. In fact, that's what his elder brother complains about. He should be made to pay for all the mess that he's created for our family. So it's a continuing theme, highlighted perhaps especially by the thief on the cross. It's a theme actually that runs through the whole of the Bible, a challenging theme, the theme of mercy, the theme that really God just accepts people as we are, accepts the mess that we make of life very often, and extends open arms to us when we come looking for forgiveness, acceptance, whatever. So justice, it's as if God takes justice, our demands for right and wrong and who's going to pay for what and punishment and all the rest of it, and God's way simply turns it upside down and says, well, actually, and here's the crunch, of course, it's people who know that their lives are in a mess who are able to accept mercy. And the dying thief acknowledged his wrong, acknowledged the mess that he'd made of his life, the muddle that his life had become, exploiting and taking advantage of other people, in much the same way as the prodigal son. And that's the message that God extends, that Jesus extends to us today as we're thinking about the Easter events. That God's mercy is so counterintuitive. is so contrary to our demand for people to pay the price. And the way to extend that mercy, the way to find that mercy, the way to accept it, is simply to come to God as the dying thief did, or indeed as the prodigal son did in the story, and say, look, I made a mess. I've got to the end of what I can control and cope with myself. I need your help, God. I just need to give myself over to your mercy, knowing that you will indeed be merciful and will accept even the worst of sinners. Actually, that's something that the great apostle St. Paul said in a slightly different way, not so very long after the events of Holy Week itself.